I'm Rochelle at the Athlete Center. This video is a bit of a flow for hip and low back mobility and teaching you a little bit of hip and low back control. So we're going to start on our backs and use our fingertips to feel the front of the pelvis, so the ASIS, or the pointy part on the front of your hip. So we're going to start with keeping that stable and moving just our knees. So we're moving our hip in our hip socket, so ball and socket. So we're just creating a little bit of internal and external rotation of the hip. Just rolling back and forth on our feet. So we call these hip windshield wipers. And we have a video that just shows them on their own. And then from here, I'm going to increase the range. I'm going to add some low back range. So now I'm going to have my hands on my lower rib cage, and we're going to have everything underneath it move. So I'm going to start with just my knees moving, so hip moving, ball and socket. And then I'm going to add a little bit of low back rotation. So going a little bit further, but trying not to move through the ribs. So having hip and low back movement without too much upper back movement. So elbows stay on the floor, shoulders stay on the floor, knees and hips rotate, low back twists. Knees and hips rotate, low back twists. From here, we're going to add a progression. So changing the angle here, sitting up tall, we're going to repeat the same move. So some internal and external hip rotation. So as I go to the left, my left hip is externally rotating and my right hip is internally rotating. And both my shoulders are pointing forward, and both my ASIS, or pointy part at the front of your hip, are pointing forward. But now I'm going to add some low back mobility, so both shoulders stay forward, but I'm going to rotate, so now my hips are facing to the left, and I'm getting some spinal rotation as well. So starting with hip rotation and then adding some spinal rotation. I like to think about, as my knees go to the right, I like to think about pulling my left shoulder back to create that space diagonally from my shoulder across to my hip. Then we're going to add a little bit of loading into the hip. So as my knees come this way, I'm going to let my shoulders come. We're going to sit up nice and tall. Now you might need a block or a blanket underneath your knees or your bum to lift yourself up if you're getting pain or cramping, especially in this back hip. But from here, we're going to see if we can add a bit more range and lean over that front knee. So we can use our fingertips to support us in this range. And as we build strength and endurance, we might take those away. And as we come down, we're putting a little bit of a stretch into that hip. When you come up, you're going to think about pushing the outside of your shin and the outside of your knee into the floor to leverage yourself up. So use that hip to push yourself up. This is what we call 90-90 position. So both our knees are bent at about a 90-degree angle. And we can lean forward to create range, and we can take away our support and push our knee into the ground to create strength and some hip loading. So this is a good routine to create a little bit of low back mobility and a little bit of hip